What's good, y'all? I'm back. Had to take a quick little break, but I'm back. So, anyways, it's the second. You guys pay y'all bills? Y'all pay the bill? If you haven't, might be a good idea. Today's the second. Just for a little heads up for y'all. Anyways, we're gonna talk about Africa and geography. We're really gonna finish up the video that we did last time because it didn't work out. So, I want to go to the map.
Incredibly, when you imagine the world, continent, and where they sit in relation to each other, chances are your mental image looks like this. But as familiar as this picture of the world may seem, this everyday use map is actually very incorrect. Take a look at any map of the world. If it looks like this one, as most maps in schools do, then your whole perception of our world is incredibly inaccurate. We all know that Africa is. When you imagine the world, the size of each continent, and where they sit in relation to each other, chances are your mental image looks like this. But as familiar as this picture of the world may seem, this everyday use map is actually very incorrect. Take a look at any map of the world. If it looks like this one, as most maps in schools do, then your whole perception of our world is incredibly inaccurate. We all know that Africa is big. It is in fact a gargantuan place, which is something that our maps have often failed to portray. However, despite the common perception that Africa is a large landmass, it is still one that distorted our geographical view of the world in a crucial way, one that often leads to misconceptions about the relative sizes of countries and continents. Because the world is a sphere, it is impossible to draw it on a flat surface without distorting it in some way. It is mathematically impossible to get it to lie flat. And that right there is the eternal mess of every map maker. The surface of a sphere cannot be mathematically represented as a plane without some form of distortion. Look at the size of Africa compared to Greenland. It is almost shocking to see Greenland on a map. It is absolutely humongous. It looks about the same size as the whole of Africa. But if you look at the true sizes of the land masses, you'll also see that it is much smaller. In truth, it is no bigger than the Democratic Republic of Congo. You could fit literally a dozen of Greenlands in Africa and still have a lot of room to spare. Greenland is certainly impressively large. If it were its own country, it would be the 12th largest in the world, and it is also the largest island on the planet. However, its position near the North Pole has dramatically exaggerated its proportion, since it is not, in fact, larger than Africa. Not even close. Although being one of the most prominent American states, smaller than Alaska but bigger than California, it may surprise you that Texas is much smaller than some not so well known African countries. The saying that everything is bigger in Texas likely originated as a reference to the enormity of the state's geographical area. A relatively unknown West African nation like Mauritania is, however, bigger on balance than Texas. Sudan is bigger, and the Democratic Republic of Congo is also larger. What makes the marketer projection particularly controversial is that it makes Europe and the United States look much larger than they really are in reality, giving them more prominence. Likewise, it takes prominence away from Africa. Some have called it a map made by Europe for Europe. Critics say that this distortion perpetuates imperialist attitudes of European domination over Africa. In the world today, scratch that, since time immemorial, The world has always been shaped by geopolitics. Geopolitics is the study of the effects of Earth's geography on politics and international relations. It focuses on political power linked to geographical space. In the world of geopolitics, size really does matter. Our perception and interpretation of big countries is different compared to small ones because bigger countries appear more powerful and intimidating. So when we shrink and stretch countries, it gives us an inaccurate mental yardstick for judging the relative sizes of countries. As we all know, perceptions are definitively powerful. It is widely perceived that smaller countries or continents are weaker and less significant. Interestingly, the problem with maps is not that Africa is sized incorrectly. As you can see here, Africa is actually the most accurately sized continent on the Mercator projection. The problem is not just that the Mercator gives an inaccurate picture of the world, although it does. On Mercator maps, Africa, sitting on the equator, reasonably undistorted, is left looking much smaller than it really is. This has implications not only for Africa, but for the whole southern hemisphere. If you want to see the true size of countries and continents, you can use the Gall-Peters projection. This is an equal area projection, which means the land area of each region in the map is shown accurately. Look at the size of Europe, the United States, and even Greenland now. The size comparison with Africa is accurate. Apparently, Europe is not as big as we thought previously. Maybe it was also a common belief that each state in America was about the same size as an average African country, but that is not the case. In the 1970s, there was a push to make the Gall-Peters projection the standard map. It is a more accurate alternative to replace Mercator, though clearly it never caught on, as we still use the 500-year-old Mercator today.
Why?
Google Maps, Bing, and OpenStreetMap all use the Mercator map as a template,
Why?
despite its obvious flaws. As with all map projections,
Why?
Gall-Peters is accurate in terms of size,
Racism.
but inaccurate when it comes to other properties, most notably shapes. Apparently, this projection also has its flaws. In the center are tall and elongated, whereas those at the top and bottom of the map are flat and wide. Gall-Peters may get the size of Greenland correct, but when viewed from above in real life, Greenland's true shape is much closer to what the Mercator projection shows. So which is the lesser evil? Would you rather use a map that distorts size or one that distorts shape? Is the shape of your country a more important concern than its size? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Canada is a vast nation, home to 6 time zones. Its endless plains spread from ocean to ocean, dominating great swaths of the northern half of the globe. But in reality, 3 Canadas would comfortably fit inside Africa. The African continent has a land area of 30.3 million square kilometers or 11.7 million square miles, enough to fit in the United States, India, China, Turkey, Germany, France, Norway, Spain, Greece, Italy, Colombia, Finland, United Kingdom, Poland, and Ukraine combined. Let us head to the east coast of South.
It's your boy Home Team here, and I'm back at it with another video of African history, culture, and worldview.
Jump
Remember,
around a
if
bit.
you
We're
want
gonna go back
access
to geography
sources,
after this.
courses, exclusive videos, or you simply want to support the Home Team, you can do so on
Why does it look so
Patreon.com.
funny,
The link is in
bro?
the
What did
description
I
box
do?
below. The Atlantic slave trade was the most tragic event in human history because of how it displaced millions of Africans from their homes and began a legacy of oppression for their descendants, generations to come. And this human tragedy is not even taking into account the Arab slave trade of African men and women, which is seldom discussed. Popular culture at times assumes we can't know which ethnic groups were taken in slavery, but with a little digging, we can identify, highlight, and remember the people who experienced this tragedy. One way we can honor these Africans is by speaking their names and acknowledging their history and experience. So let's begin with the top 10 African ethnic groups taken in the Atlantic slave trade. At number 10, we have the Shamba people. The Shamba are located largely in northern Nigeria and Cameroon. They're an interesting group of people because their oral history seems to suggest that Shamba identity largely formed due to a mixture of two people who spoke different but similar languages. The Daka and local speakers migrated and intermingled with each other, forming a strong Shamba identity. They were victims of incessant slave raiding by the Fulani Jihads in the 18th and 19th centuries. It seems to have gotten so bad that they migrated to the mountains, organized themselves, and retaliated, attacking slave and trading caravans. For number 9, we have the Wolof. The Wolof are located in Senegal, Gambia, and Mauritania. The origins of the Wolof are debated, but a general belief is that the Wolof originated further north and began a migration southward into Mauritania and Senegal. The Wolof founded their own kingdoms and even an empire, but warring led to the enslavement of many Wolof populations. A segment of Wolof society contend that their first kingdom and founding father came from the Almoravid Empire and traveled south, bringing Islam to Senegal. Most Wolofs today are Muslims, but violent jihads in the past led to the enslavement and displacement of Wolof society. This violence was so prominent that it led to internal disagreements among the Wolof on Islam. At number 8, we have the Abron people. The Abron inhabit the borderlands of Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana, and Burkina Faso. They are part of a larger Akan cultural and linguistic ethnic group. The Akan people themselves are believed to have migrated to the forested regions from a more northeastern region of the Sahel. The Abron have a matrilineal system of descent like all Akan-speaking groups. They were essentially in the center of the Gold Coast slaving populace, and many were caught up in it. Because such a large number were taken, they were given a specific name in Jamaica, known as Coromantes. Coming in at number 7, we have the Fulani. The Fulani are one of the largest, if not the largest, ethnic group in West Africa. They take this title because they are dispersed amongst so many nations in West Africa and are even present in Eastern Africa. They can be found from Senegal all the way to the Central African Republic. The regions that they're most concentrated in is Senegal, Guinea, Mali, Niger, Nigeria, and Cameroon. And that's just the concentrated regions in which they're present. The origins of the Fulani are very hotly debated, but the most sound evidence points to their origin in North Africa. They are probably one of the original people in North Africa, due to some of the wall paintings that some scholars say point to their presence going all the way back to 6000 BC in Algeria. In fact, their history is very rich and full. They were well known throughout every region they inhabited and mixed with other ethnic groups. They had vast empires and kingdoms all throughout West Africa. Fulanis converted to Islam very early in their history and were the primary slave raiders in West Africa.
Ooh.
The Fulani sold so many African ethnic groups throughout their history due to the jihads and slave raiding missions they initiated. Ironically, even though they were one of the primary slave raiders, they themselves were constantly enslaved.
Damn.
In fact, some of the most popular slaves taken to the New World were Fulani, like Ayuba Diallo, Omar Ibn Said, and Abdul Rahman, all of which were taken to America specifically. Because they're one of the biggest, if not the biggest ethnic group in West Africa, it only makes sense that they got caught up in all the Atlantic slave trade mess. In fact, I myself am a product of this, as my maternal ancestry, according to DNA analysis, is Fulani.
I wouldn't trust
For
that,
number
bro.
6, we have the Mande. Now, some of you may think it isn't fair to pick the Mande because the Mande are a collection of ethnic groups all over West Africa that speak the Mande languages. But it's nearly impossible to pick one Mande speaking group out of all of them because there's so many, and they're dispersed throughout so many countries in West Africa. The most dominant Mande group probably has to go to the Malinke, also known as a Mandinka. I guess we'll focus on them because the Mandinka built the greatest and one of the largest empires in West Africa. They influenced other ethnic groups culturally and linguistically, and they raided the coastline of West Africa, intermixing with coastline people. Even some Fulani themselves had Mandinka ancestry. The Mandinka were so prominent and popular that the term Mandingo, which is an English corruption of the word, became a popular reference for strong black men with many attributes. The origins of the Mande are said to be in the Sahara, further north. Archaeological evidence suggests that the Mande groups were the first producers of stone settlement civilizations in West Africa, where they built elaborate fortified structures in Mauritania. Mande culture was the most dominant in West Africa from around 1100 BC all the way to 1600. The Mandinka raided the coastline of West Africa, creating many hybrid kingdoms, all of which got caught up in the Atlantic slave trade. Coming in at number 5, we have the Fang people. The Fang people are the largest ethnic group in Benin, found particularly in its southern region. They are also found in southwest Nigeria and Togo. The Fang people historically were a sort of hybrid ethnic group. Oral history of the Fang people speak on the intermarrying between the Aja and the Yoruba, creating a new ethnic group called the Fang. The Fang people created a very popular kingdom in the 17th century called Daomi, as they were well known for their female warriors, later called the Daomi Amazons. In fact, Black Panther's Dora Milaje were inspired by the Fang female warriors. The Fang people were both victims and also victimized by other ethnic groups in the Atlantic slave trade. They became a significant populace amongst the enslaved peoples of Haiti and Trinidad. The popular Haitian voodoo is a direct descendant from the Fang people. It became the catalyst used to win the war against the French in their successful war campaign to gain their freedom. Coming in at number 4, we have the Bakongo. The Bakongo people are a Bantu people living along the Atlantic coast of Central Africa. They live primarily in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and Angola. Similar to the Mandinka in Upper West Africa, they created one of the most prominent empires in their region of Central Africa, called the Congo Empire. The Bakongo migrated closer to the coast around the 13th century from the northeast and became one of the first Africans below the Sahara to convert to Christianity via trade with the Portuguese. The Bakongo got wrapped up in the Atlantic slave trade, largely due to Portuguese intrusion. The Portuguese were literally taking citizens of the Congo Empire and enslaving them illegally. It got so bad that the king of Congo wrote a letter to the Portuguese king. Each day, the traders are kidnapping our people, children of this country, sons of our nobles and vassals, even people of our own family. This corruption and depravity are so widespread that our land is entirely depopulated. We need in this kingdom only priests and school teachers, and no merchandise, unless it is wine and flour for mass. It is our wish that this kingdom not be a place for the trade or transport of slaves. Many of our subjects eagerly lust after Portuguese merchandise that your subjects have brought into our domains. To satisfy this inordinate appetite, they seize many of our black free subjects. They sell them. After having taken these prisoners secretly or at night, as soon as the captives are in the hands of white men, they are branded with a red hot iron. In fact, the grandson of the king of Congo was taken into slavery. His name was Ganga Zumba, which translates into Great Lord. His mother, the Princess of Congo, led a battalion in the Battle of Mbwila, but the Portuguese aligned with the African enemies of Congo, which included the notorious Mangala, who were pretty much the Zulu of the region, and other African forces joined the fighting, numbering in the thousands. Due to the defeat at Mbwila, her son was taken to Brazil as a slave. But Ganga, knowing who he was, refused to be a slave. He became the first leader of a massive runaway slave settlement in Brazil, Some even referenced it as a kingdom because it had a palace, guards, and ministers. Brazil, like much of South America, became a port of entry for many Bakongo people and was one of the main entry ports for most enslaved Africans in general. Many people don't know that most enslaved Africans went to South America and not the North. Breaking our top three, we have the Igbo. The Igbo are present day South Central and Southeastern Nigeria. The Igbo are one of the largest ethnic groups in Africa. Even though the origins of the Igbo are debated, they have a strong presence in Nigeria for thousands of years. The Igbo got caught up in the Atlantic slave trade due to the Aro Confederacy. The Aro people had migrated to the region of Igbo land as a result of the demand for slaves and palm oil. The Aro Confederacy captured and enslaved Igbos and sold them to Europeans. Many of the slaves taken from the Bight of Biafra would have been Igbo. The slaves taken from the Bight of Biafra accounted for about 13% of all the slaves taken to the Americas. Coming in at number two, we have the Yoruba. The Yoruba are an ethnic group of southwestern and north central Nigeria, as well as southern and central Benin. The Yoruba, like the Fulani, are actually one of the largest ethnic groups in Africa. North America may even be one of the most recognizable group of Africans, the face of an African immigrant, if you will. The Yoruba were the dominant cultural force in southern Nigeria as far back as the 11th century. The origin of the Yoruba can be placed before the Oyo Empire around Ele-Ife. The Oyo Empire was active in the Atlantic slave trade as Yorubas became victims and victimizers in the process of enslavement. The Yoruba were dispersed en masse to multiple locations in North and South America, with enslaved populations going to Cuba, Dominican Republic, Venezuela, St. Lucia, Jamaica, Brazil, Grenada, Trinidad and Tobago.
Did y'all hear that?
The Yoruba seemed to impact the culture wherever they landed. Yoruba culture became so prominent and dominant that the Yoruba pantheon began to be worshipped in North and South America. The Orishas today are still worshipped and celebrated. And coming in at number one, we have the Mbundu. The Mbundu people are primarily centered in Angola today. There are multiple stories surrounding the origins of the Mbundu, but the most complete one seems to point to the fact that they descend from a people group that had multiple chiefdoms around the Zambezi River. According to the Atlas of the Atlantic slave trade, most enslaved Africans came from the region of Congo and Angola. These Africans were largely taken to Brazil, especially from Angola. The Mbundu had many kingdoms that were vassal states to the larger Congo Empire. Queen Nzinga was the most popular Mbundu queen from that region and had extensive interaction with the Portuguese. Because the demand for slaves were so high, the Congo Empire established slave raiding and perpetuated warfare with Mbundu kingdoms, enslaving many Mbundu people. The Portuguese themselves would align with the Mangala to enslave many Mbundu people. The presence of the Mbundu was so high in Brazil that they began to influence the culture itself. Most Mbundu slaves were war captives, so they developed their own martial art technique and brought it to Brazil. This Mbundu martial art was called Ngolo, and in Brazil, it later became known as capoeira. Capoeira is one of Brazil's biggest cultural indicators and a symbol of strong Mbundu presence in Brazil. Evidence of the mass amounts of Mbundu people taken in the slave trade is my own paternal ancestry, according to DNA analysis.
Didn't you say Fulani?
Mbundu.
So
I'm glad that I can have somewhat of an idea of what happened to my Mbundu ancestor who survived his journey, making me a product of survival.
Yeah, man. I'm learning with y'all, man. You know, don't think I know all this stuff because I do not. I'm obsessed with the Caribbean. I ain't gonna lie. There's a lot of Afrocentric or spiritual people, however you want to call them, and they're here in America, and they're obsessed with Africa and African countries. And that's okay. I'm totally okay with that. But I'm obsessed with the Caribbean. I just am, man. I'm so obsessed with the Caribbean. Like, I just feel like it's closer to me than Africa. That's how I feel. So, however, whatever that means, or however y'all want to take that, makes people angry. Whatever. obsessed with the Caribbean, so I study a lot about that, and I do study Africa, but I'm really weak in Africa, and it's so many countries, bro. It's so I mean, you pick one country out of Africa, and maybe I know a little bit about it, but I'm just saying, like, it's too much. It's I don't think y'all know, like, it would take so much to dig through it. But that's what this is all about. Like I said, I want you guys to be activists. I want y'all to be angry, but and I also need y'all to be, armed. And for you to be able to be armed, you have to have knowledge, because the guns are not gonna do it. The guns ain't gonna do it, bro. The guns ain't gonna do it. This is the only thing that's gonna win, bro. The war. So y'all need to put stuff in there so you have armor, or you have you have arms to be able to attack with, because you're gonna need them. So but you need to know what you're talking about, and for the only way you to know what you're talking about is to fucking study this shit. So if you want to talk about Africa, then study the shit out of it. It's a whole bunch of information. I'm gonna move to Haiti, even though I freaking probably did. I probably covered this in another video, but we're gonna do it again anyways, because y'all probably didn't watch it. And we're gonna move on to Jamaica after that. And I'm going to Haiti just because I'm obsessed with Haiti. I'm obsessed with Haiti, bro. And y'all don't know shit about Haiti, so let's go.
Haiti is like the smallest country with the most. I've actually been to Haiti. Funny story. I was the only one in my mission.
I keep fucking up, y'all. Sorry. It's when I put it up there, the volume. It's time to do. I don't want to play his thing because it's gonna fuck me up. I still did it.
Haiti is like the smallest country with the most intense history. Seriously, this little guy, barely larger than the size of Israel, including the West Bank and Gaza, essentially changed the entire face of Western society. Lots to talk about, so let's just jump in. Haiti, you're like a candle in a hurricane that just won't be put out. First of all, Haiti is located in the western third island of Hispaniola, shared with the Dominican Republic in the Caribbean Sea, just east of Cuba and Jamaica, west of Puerto Rico, and south of the Turk and Caicos Islands. At its narrowest point, Haiti is only about 32 kilometers wide along the border with the DR. The country is divided into 10 departments, and the capital, Port-au-Prince, located just at the beginning of the Tiburon Peninsula, or this long, narrow landmass protruding into the sea. Speaking of which, because of the way the country is shaped, Haiti actually has the second longest coastline in the Caribbean after Cuba. People say Haiti is shaped like a horseshoe. However, I personally believe it looks more like a deformed anorexic Pac-Man trying to eat one of those yellow pellet things, except the yellow pellet thing is also anorexic. Largest cities outside of the Port-au-Prince area would be
I love this guy, y'all.
And the country's busiest and only two international airports, Port-au-Prince, Toussaint Louverture International, and Cap Haitian's interestingly named Hugo Chavez International Airport. They made a deal with the Venezuelans, yada yada, they named it after the guy. But there are 6 main islands. The largest one, Gonave, Ville-la-Vache, the 2
That's
Cayman
actually
Islands,
important. The
Grand
part he just
Cay,
rushed
and
over.
Tortuga Island, which used to be a pirate headquarters that hosted the Brethren of the Coast and international.
He rushes over controversial stuff.
We're not too far off from the truth. Honestly, I stopped watching those movies after the 3rd one. I mean, I get it. Squidface wants revenge and Keira Knightley becomes the king. Done. Stop adding more plot lines. Otherwise, the only dispute they have is with the U.S. over this little guy, Navassa Island off the southwestern coast. The border with the DR is marked off by a series of river systems like the Libon in the center or the pleasantly named Massacre River in the north, and a long stretch of the 45 highway that both countries share. So on either side, you can view a different country. The 3 main road entrances into the DR are Ansa-Pitre in the south, the 8 highway along Lake Etang, Sumatra, and the 6 highway entering into Dajabon in the north. Otherwise, some notable sites might also include places like the Sanssouci Palace ruins, the Negmaon statue of the unknown slave, the Marche en Fer or the Iron Market, the Mupalan Haitian National Museum, Fort Jacques, the Atis Resistance Contemporary Sculpture Museum that uses real human bones with metal, the Jubilee Voodoo Monument in Ansa-Tholeur, and the crown jewel of the country, Citadelle La Ferrière, the largest fortress in the Western Hemisphere, built by 20,000 people to defend against the French. In addition, there are surprisingly beautiful beaches all over, but that info belongs in the next segment.
I can't speak
Now, Haiti has a lot of flack for its land controversies, and we'll explain why in a little bit. First of all, Haiti is the most mountainous country in the Caribbean, with numerous chains and massifs defining the interior structure of the land. You have the 7 main belts, the Massif Nord, the Montagne Noire, the Center Plateau, the Chaîne de Mathieu, the
My mom speaks it though.
Not Trudeau. Haut d'Eau, there's a difference, the Massif de la Haute, and the Chaîne de la Selle, where the tallest mountain, Pic la Selle, can be found. Only the North Massif and South Massif on the Tiburon Peninsula retain Haiti's concentrated rainforests, where you can find the national animal, the Hispaniola trogon, whereas the rest of the country is mostly drier and sparsely forested mountain terrain. This is partially because for the longest time, Haiti has been dealing with a huge deforestation problem. About 60% of the population's domestic energy production is still heavily dependent on charcoal. Most media outlets get Haiti's forest cover percentage drastically incorrect, some citing it as low as 2%. Okay, that's like less than United Arab Emirates. Seriously, mainstream media, get your act together. The point is, whatever the actual percentage is, you can still see trees in Haiti. And in the worst parts, it's more like grassy hills with patchy tree clusters instead of dry, desolate mounds of dirt. Nonetheless, deforestation has caused erosion and flooding problems all over the country in the past century. Add with that pesky hurricanes and the occasional earthquake, and bam, you have the country with the worst luck in the Americas. This is because Haiti, and even more unfortunately the capital Port-au-Prince, lies directly on the Enriquillo Plantain Garden Fault Zone, a lateral shifting fault which is part of the Caribbean tectonic plate that grinds against the North American plate. Worst possible position ever. But hey, I feel you, Haiti. I live close to the San Andreas Fault, and we're due for a big one that will basically kill everyone. So, high five! These fault lines are also pretty much the reasons why the largest lake, Lac Azoué, or Étang Sumatra, the twin lake of the DR's Enriquillo, was formed. Both are saline, brackish water lakes that harbor flamingos and crocodiles, and flamingos that the crocodiles feed off of. Otherwise, the longest river in Haiti and all of Hispaniola, the Artibonite River, starting in the DR, until it empties into the Gulf of Gonave. The Plaine de l'Artibonite is the most important area for crops where most of Haiti's agriculture comes from. However, most of their economy is actually driven by textiles, not food crops. About 2/3 of the population don't even have formal jobs. Most people make income under the table or freelance or day labor gigs. Remittance money from family members abroad also fuels about 20% of the national GDP alone. Speaking of that, Haiti is known for having some really good food. Like, I know you guys are in poverty, but man, when you have food, you know how to cook it.
Did he just make a poverty joke?
Yes, I did, because it was used lightly based off of statistical data that was not grounded in my opinion and not used for the purpose of defamation.
Well, Amazing foods like
tom-tom, boulak noir, cassava bread, griot, and the disputable national dish soupe jumeau, or pumpkin soup. Also around Fort Dimanche, you can find the famous dirt cookies made of dried clay, originally used as a cheap food source to help people get minerals, even though they kind of really offer little nutrition. Also, Haitian geography. Is it true? Do you guys really make spaghetti shakes? Rapid fire round. Other notable points of interest include the Grotte Marie-Jeanne Caves, the Bassin Bleu Beach, Labadie, various waterfalls like Bassin Zim, Saute Maturine, and the Haute Soto waterfall.
Go to Haiti, check it out, y'all. Check it out, man. If you can, anyways. If you can, go check it out.
For healing. Yeah, you heard that last part right. I know you're dying to hear more about the
I would totally
stuff.
go. I want to go. I'm gonna
We're
go.
going to transition into... Haiti was once called the Pearl of the Caribbean, as it was the richest part of the French Empire. Today, things look a little different.
That's important.
Haiti has just under 11 million people and is the third most populous country in the Caribbean.
So he glosses over
95% of the country is ethnically black,
controversial
and the remaining 5% is mostly made up of mixed and white Haitians, mostly of French descent. They also use the Haitian gourde as their currency. They use the Type A/B American-style plug outlets, and they drive on the right side.
You can't talk about that stuff, but I will.
Haitians also use the word dollar to refer to 5 goods, not an American dollar. It's a little confusing. Now let's get to the fun stuff. What exactly makes a Haitian person so special, and how did Haiti become what it is today? This is a very long-winded question rooted in history, but in the quickest way I can put it, Taínos, Columbus, French, slaves, voodoo prophecy, revolt, French masters killed, independence. Then France was like, pay a fine or avoid war. They agree, crazy dictators, even temporary monarchs arise. They attack, colonize, and heavily tax the DR for a short period of time. DR gets angry and fights back. Haiti resorts to paying debt mostly in trees. Finally, in the 40s, they finish paying off the debt, and the economy is absolutely decimated at this point. Essentially, Haiti was not only just the first black republic, but also the first nation.
They didn't finish paying in the 40s. That's not true.
Banned slavery in the Western world and played a huge pivotal role in disrupting the whole international order of the 19th century by starting a chain of events that would eventually end the Atlantic slave trade. Unfortunately, this is kind of where the good news stops for Haiti. Haiti's revolt came at a huge price. Their history would soon be followed by embargoes, invasions, military occupations, dictatorships, not to mention natural disasters like earthquakes, hurricanes, the occasional cholera outbreak, and a merciless series of unfortunate events. Yeah, y'all Baudelaire kids ain't got nothing on Haiti, okay? Oh, your rich parents died, boo-hoo. Yeah, try having nothing and having everyone die, including you. Haiti's history was both groundbreakingly defiant and revolutionary, but also very violent and riddled with treachery and suffering. Former President President Jean-Claude Duvalier, also known as Baby Doc, was quoted for saying, "It is the destiny of the people of Haiti to suffer." I mean, that was the leader of their country saying that. Yeah, thanks for that bout of reassurance. Nonetheless, struggles aside, Haiti is absolutely rich in culture. One thing you kind of have to understand about Haiti is that it is very Afrocentric. Other Caribbean states like Cuba and the Dominican Republic might identify closer with their European roots rather than their African ones. However, Haiti, it's just like Kanye West once said, "Black is the new black."
Did you just quote Kanye West?
Yes, I did, and I'm sorry, I will never do that again. As tough as things get, Haitians are super proud of who they are and where their ancestors came from. One of the most distinguishing facets of Haitian culture would be the language. Today, there are two official languages: French, the language of the elite and business class, and as of 1987, Haitian Creole became the second language, making Haiti the largest Creole-speaking people group in the world. The spelling is almost completely phonetical and has a grammar and syntax structure of its own. For example, in French, you would say "c'est mon ami," but in Haitian Creole, you would say "ça c'est ami moi." In French, il va travailler le matin. In Creole, il allait travailler non matin. Nonetheless, if a Haitian person were to go to France, they could still probably articulate everything they would want to say in Creole, and with enough patience and listening, they could survive. Otherwise, the one thing that always seems to be synonymous with Haitian culture to the outside world would be voodoo. Voodoo is one of the official religions in Haiti. However, it's hard to get an exact number of how many adherents there are, as Haitian voodoo has been heavily synchronized with Catholicism and Indian beliefs. Now, there are different types of voodoo rituals and rites, but essentially, they believe that during a ceremony, a god inhabits the body of a believer, which explains why you might see convulsing and erratic movements if you are to witness one of the events happen.
It's like a Baptist church.
Most Haitians will definitely at least nominally identify as Christian,
Pentecostal,
with Catholics making up over half of the adherents and Protestants making up about 30%. However, again, it's hard to tell exactly which ones are very devout Christians, as the voodoo
evangelical
are pretty prevalent. Regardless of the economic struggles, though, Haitians are never
Black
short
folks
of
here in the
partying
South
and enjoying life. They host one of the biggest carnival celebrations in the Caribbean. Oh, and Haiti is incredibly colorful. Everything from the tap-tap buses to the paintings you can buy on the side of the streets. Music styles exist like rara, as well as Creole, Bazin, and hip-hop. Dances like merengue and compas are common. Otherwise, some notable Haitian people throughout history might include people like Jean-Jacques Dessalines, the founding father of Haiti, Anacaona, the Taino chief that met up with Christopher Columbus, author Frank Etienne, John James Audubon, Raoul Peck, Jimmy Jean-Louis, Garcelle Beauvais, Philomé Aubin, T. Weiss, and of course Grammy Award winner Wycliffe Jean, who tried to become the president at one time, but then he was ruled out because he hadn't been a resident of Haiti for 5 years, the minimum. Haiti likes to keep things Haitian, but that doesn't mean they don't like to reach out to other countries. Let's find out who they kettle with.
This is important.
Now, Haiti is today pretty friendly with everyone. It's just they're like a little bit of an economic liability. The largest trading partners are, of course, the U.S. and the DR. Both countries also host the largest populations of Haitian immigrants abroad. Haitians love Quebec, Canada, and see it as like their francophone white cousins. Montreal even hosts a noticeably sizable Haitian community, and Quebecois tourists are not uncommon visitors. When it comes to their best friends, however, every Haitian I talk to has said Cuba and Venezuela. Cuba is like the on and off boyfriend of Haiti that flirts with her all the time. Cubans are smitten by Haitian Creole music, even though they might not understand it, and have sent numerous medical professionals to assist the sick in Haiti. Venezuela was very impressed with Haiti's revolt and has shown utmost respect for the nation for a long time. They provide Haiti with most of their petroleum needs, and Hugo Chavez visited, praising the country, which in return got him an airport named after him. In conclusion, Haiti is probably the country with the worst luck, but with the most respect. Although negative images may still prevail, give them a chance. As the Haitian proverb goes, "Ça pa connaît, puis qu'on passe où." Stay tuned. Honduras is coming up next.
Haiti, bro, Haiti. I could watch that episode over and over. I've seen it multiple times, bro. I'm learning with y'all. Every time I watch it, I learn something else. It's so much information. He just mash it into you. That shit is like a freaking, I don't know, an 8-hour class mashed into 11 minutes. Maybe even more, like a semester worth of information mashed into 11 minutes. He does a great job, y'all. We're going to watch another one on Jamaica because, you know, why the fuck not?
It's Suckers Lion, Boss Him Bound, and the crowd don't get excited. Jamaican subscriber Ashley P sent me this book of Jamaican patois poems by Louise Bennett. Here's a poem about a time a circus came to Kingston and a lion escaped from its cage. What a magic, what a mystery. Circus lion, boss him bound, and the crowd don't get excited, and the crowd is safe and sound. Jamaica people granny child, Jamaica people bold. They face the king obese with everything under control. The lion bust the cage door down, the lion jumped the wall. Not a soul done holler out, and not a soul done ball. The lion mingled with the crowd and prowled from west to east. The people sitting calmly and salute the king obese. I love patois.
It's time to take geography now.
Hey everybody, I'm your host Barbs. Jamaica, probably the most iconic Caribbean nation to ever hit international mainstream pop culture. So many things to talk about. Let's just jump in. Back in the Caribbean. Don't you just love this region of the planet?
I do.
First of all, Jamaica is the
I do.
fourth largest island country in the Caribbean, located west of Haiti, south of Cuba, and east of the Cayman Islands, where all the billionaires hide those wonderfully offshore bank accounts to avoid taxes. Jamaica is divided into 14 parishes, and the capital, Kingston, in itself acting as a parish. The parishes are further kind of split into 3 historic counties that don't have any administrative relevance. They are Cornwall, Middlesex, and Surrey. Yeah, with names like that, you can almost smell the British residue. The largest cities after the capital, Kingston, would be Spanish Town and Portsmouth, both in the St. Catherine Parish. However, if we're talking about outside the general Kingston area, the next largest would be Montego Bay and Mandeville, with the 3 busiest and only international airports being Kingston, Norman Manley International, Montego Bay's Sangster International, and Bosco Bell's Ian Fleming International. There was some controversy over naming that last airport because everybody was like, why don't we name it after a Jamaican person? But Prime Minister Golding was like, look, the dude kind of put Jamaica on the map, and if it wasn't for us, he wouldn't have had the inspiration to create James Bond, so suck it up, people. Now, despite being small, Jamaica still holds its ground on the disputed territory between them and Colombia, Nicaragua, the uninhabited submerged reef sandbank areas of Bajo Nuevo and the Serranía Bank. Remember, people, the second you discover even the smallest sandbank protruding from the sea, you gotta claim it. That way you get an exclusive economic zone. Woohoo! Speaking of which, the country has about 30 smaller islands and islets and keys and sandbanks lining their shores, the largest one being Great Goat Island in the south across Moore's Pen. Now, the one thing you need to know about Jamaica and its charm is that if you come, you will notice some of the strangest place names imaginable. Each town has a little bit of a story and context, so you'll encounter things like Broke Neck Gully, Rat Trap, Betty's Hope, Rest and Be Thankful, Old Woman Savannah, See No More, Time and Patience, Wait a Bit, and my personal favorite, Me No Sen, You No Come. Jamaicans just like to call it as they see it. Simple. No need to overcomplicate. What should we call this place? Drop Sandwich Lagoon. Another interesting thing is that Jamaica has maroon villages, which are inhabited by people descended from slaves that escaped and created their own free societies in the mountains. These villages would eventually play a strong role in Jamaica's history, and in a future episode, Sierra Leone, you'll just have to wait like 47 years for that episode. Today, they kind of hold like a slight autonomous and separate role from the rest of Jamaican culture as they live in secluded areas, holding on to ancient African traditions. Otherwise, some top notable spaces of interest might include Hero Circle, glistening waters with bioluminescent organisms that light up, Windsor's Fire Spring, you can literally light it on Funds River Falls, Reggae Beach, Cool Runnings Water Park, Mountain River Cave with Taino and Arawak paintings, Mystic Mountain Rainforest, bobsledding in Ochos Rios, Martha Bray River wooden rafts, and Irie Blue Hole and Secret Falls. Yeah, I'm still kind of mind blown over that fire, water, and glowing lagoon place. That's just proof that Jamaica is thriving with magical natural wonders, which brings us to... Jamaica may be small, but it is definitely loaded with natural treasures. First of all, Jamaica lies below the Cayman Trough on the Nicaragua Rise, an area in the Caribbean Sea that is elevated, giving Jamaica shallower waters and richer biodiversity. This also gives them the 7th largest natural harbor in the world, Kingston Harbor. The country is also about 146 miles long, 235 kilometers, and at its widest, only about 52 miles, 84 kilometers wide. Basically, Jamaica is made up of nice valleys and plains in the west and center, sometimes referred to as cockpit country, with the small Mocho and Dry Harbor Mountains in the center. And finally, the tallest range, the Blue Mountains, with the tallest peak, Blue Mountain Peak, in the east, starting around Kingston. The longest river being the Black River on the west side, and Wally Wash Pond being the largest body of water inland. Now, just like we studied in the Dominica episode, Jamaica is also home to natural mineral and hot springs, such as Blue Hole, Bubbling Springs, Milk River, Rockford Mineral Spa, and the Blue Lagoon. Not this one, this one. Although much of the island has been stripped for agriculture, wildlife is also quite prevalent, especially in the undisturbed forests in the north and Blue Mountains. Animals like bats, hutia, boar, and the indigenous Jamaican boa and freshwater Jamaican slider turtle can be found. Speaking of agriculture, Jamaica was primarily used by the colonists for sugar plantations. However, today all sorts of crops are grown, but most notably the ackee fruit, which actually tastes salty, not sweet. Ackee is used in the national dish ackee and saltfish. Otherwise, other notable Jamaican dishes might include rice and peas, jerk chicken, chicken foot soup, manish water, steamed kalaloo, and gizaga. And I know what half of you are thinking. Yes, let's talk ganja. Yes, we all know it. Cannabis is pretty internationally recognized as a part of Jamaican culture. It was actually introduced from India by indentured servants from India, which is where the word ganja comes from. It's weird because for the longest time, growing marijuana and even possessing it was illegal, even though you can literally just find plants in the middle of the forests. It wasn't until 2015 that the country voted to decriminalize and amend strict laws. Today, you are allowed to have up to 5 plants legally, more if you have a cultivator's license. Possession up to 2 ounces or 56 grams is legal. And Rastafarians are allowed to use it for religious purposes. And the Rastafarians are a whole other story. Jamaica's people are few, but incredibly world-renowned and unique in so many ways. Looks like a great time to discuss that in
Demographics.
Jamaica lives by the motto, out of many, one people, attributing the unity to all the cultural pieces that have made them who they are today. First of all, the country has about 3 million people and is the third largest Anglophone nation in the Americas. The vast majority of Jamaicans identify as black at over 90%, about 7% are mixed, and the remainder are actually mostly made up of Asians, not whites, like the Chinese and Indian Jamaicans, with whites following.
A lot of y'all don't know that.
Descended from British colonialists.
It's a whole bunch of Asians in Jamaica.
And the coolest
Jamaican
Asians speak in a Jamaican accent. Here's a white guy and a Chinese guy both born in Jamaica.
Come from Jamaica. We come from the western part of Jamaica. Can't really tell you where we come from down there though, because I don't know where we come from.
I'm Jamaican. Whatever people don't believe me, they don't believe I come from Jamaica because I'm Chinese.
Yeah, that was pretty cool, wasn't it? They use the Jamaican dollar as their currency, they use the type A, B, American-style plug outlets, and they drive on the left side of the road. Now, even though they have a small population, Jamaica has probably made the biggest global impact for Caribbean culture out of all their neighbors. In the quickest way I can summarize their history, Tainos and Arawaks, Christopher Columbus comes in and calls it Santiago, slaves come in from Africa, Brits come in calling it Jamaica, slavery abolished in 1838. The Brits were like, dang, we need cheap labor since the slaves are free. Oh yeah, let's do the same thing we did with Guyana. Come on, Indians and Chinese. Finally, Jamaica gained independence in 1962. However, they still fall under the Commonwealth as a constitutional monarchy. Queen Elizabeth still remains the technical head of state, but nobody really sees her as like the head of state. Now, due to Jamaica's relative isolation from the rest of the Antilles, Jamaica had to kind of develop their own unique style of customs and traditions. For one, Christianity has played a huge role in Jamaica. Jamaica also has more churches per square kilometer than anywhere else in the world. Contrary to
like the north side,
Rastafarianism, although started in Jamaica in the 1930s, only makes a small minority of somewhere around 5% of the population. If you don't know anything about Rastafarianism, basically it's an Afrocentric belief system that takes inspiration from the Christian Bible as certain rituals and doctrines like the one we discussed in the Ethiopia episode, in which they believe that Haile Selassie was the Messiah, yada yada yada. If you're interested in learning it, just Google it.
Don't yada yada.
You just do that for every episode. Just Google it. Jamaica.
He always
second. We all know the biggest source of
the important stuff. He always
the music. Starting in the 50s, Jamaica's ska and rocksteady precursors to the 60s reggae and dancehall melodies not only became super popular in themselves, but also paved the way for other branch genres like hip hop and EDM. In order to really appreciate Jamaican music, though, it might be wise to brush up on the part I personally find most fascinating, patois. Now, although in a legal sense, the official language of Jamaica is Standard Jamaican English, or SJE, many would say that technically there are two languages, the other being Jamaican patois, which is basically like an English Creole, much like what Haiti did with French. The thing is, Jamaican patois is kind of like a loose, feel-it-as-you-go type of language. It doesn't have an official standardized format, but there are certainly universally used words, such as talawa, process, pitney, duck, big up, and of course everyone knows the classics wagwan and irie. However, when they want to emphasize something, they like repeat a word twice, like pasa pasa, licky licky, picky picky, and they always use like filler words which don't have any meaning, but it kind of illustrates the story better. For example, okay, Jamaican geography Darren wrote this, and I'm gonna try to see if I can do it. So me go so bumps and run a race, then me go and run hard, and me go rough stick thick, and me win it easily. I don't know how I did. That was either incredibly offensive or kind of acceptable.
We do that here.
Chances are you will get a nickname, and it's usually based off of anything they notice from you. Yo, man, what's your name? Keith. No, man, you like the broom, your name Broomy. You eat the cupcake, your name Munchie. You're raising 3 daughters in a house in San Francisco. Me go and call you Bob Saget. Like that. Anyway, we could go on explaining more about
that here too.
Traditions, dances, or how they're the only Caribbean nation with an active hockey team, even though all the players are like literally Canadian nationals, but that'll take too long. For what it's worth, some notable people of Jamaican descent might include Michael Lee Chin, Dr. Thomas P. Leckie, Oliver Samuel, sprinters Usain Bolt, Shelly Ann Fraser-Price, and Asafa Powell, Merlin Oti, Dustin Brown, Jimmy Cliff, Ziggy Marley, Shaggy, Mona Hammond, Grace Jones, Sonia Richards-Ross, Mary Seacole, Damian Marley, Sean Kingston, Portia Simpson-Miller, Marcus Garvey, Naomi Campbell, Notorious B.I.G., Patrick Ewing, Louise Simone Bennett, and the most iconic Jamaican maybe of all time, the master himself, Robert Bob Nesta Marley. All right, now we gotta move on and see who else likes to dance the reggae beat with Jamaica. If you ask a Jamaican what Jamaicans are best at, they'll probably say something like knowing how to slow down and take it easy when life needs to. Therefore, it's not hard for other countries to like Jamaica. First of all, Jamaica has close ties to Cuba, as they have been giving scholarships and medical help for decades. Treaties and business deals have always been active. They have a funny little rivalry with Trinidad and Tobago and Barbados, though, when it comes to dominating the tourism industry and sports competitions. But when they meet up as people, it's like they're brothers all over again. China keeps an eye on them, considering that they already have a noticeable Chinese minority. By the way, Tessa and Chin, who won The Voice in the US, was like a huge deal. And they have been investing like crazy over the past few decades. Jamaicans see this as kind of like a suspiciously nice gesture because they like the business, but they don't want to be taken over by excessive debt. Also, like mentioned in the Ethiopia episode, Jamaicans love Ethiopia, especially Rastafarians. In terms of their best friends, though, the Jamaicans I've talked to have nations the USA, Canada, and the UK. These areas have the largest Jamaican diaspora communities, and remittance money makes a huge part of their economy. Visa-free entry is allowed for each nation, and each country places Jamaica high on tourism publicity, which in return gives them huge global popularity. In conclusion, Jamaica is like the little island. Stay tuned. Japan is coming up next.
Yeah, so y'all, the reason why I play those two videos is because I'm hoping that you guys can see the connection between Jamaica, Haiti, Cuba, and basically the south of the United States, Louisiana, Mississippi, Georgia, Alabama, even Texas. There's a real connection between the Caribbean and the South in the United States. One day I'll write a book on that, because this is something that's why I'm studying the Caribbean, because at some point I'm gonna bring it back to the United States. So my focus now is to learn a lot about the Caribbean, and then I'm gonna bring it back to the South of the United States, because I already know a lot about the South of the United States. I grew up in that, so I'm gonna be able to make a comparison between the two and show how there's a line that you can draw between the way that people behave there and the way that people behave here, Black folks. You know, because I know y'all know, like in Louisiana, you got all the Cajun folks, all that French and Creole and all that. And I mean, I can't see how you can't see a connection between that and Haiti and Jamaica. I might play another video, or I might wrap this up. I'm not sure. We can go to this Vietnam. I think we're gonna keep it going. We're gonna switch gears though, because I have this guy who's talking about Vietnam, and there's a few old videos. I love watching old videos. I love watching old videos where people talk candidly, and that's the reason why I talk candidly in my videos, because hopefully in the future, some people look at this and they'll think of it as cool, because it gives you really good insight when people just talk normally. Yeah, and then if you can look back on that old time, like, okay, so that's what we're gonna do here.
Literally,
This guy's page is pretty cool. He does. He's been all this stuff is fairly David Hoffman. Anyways, he's got a YouTube channel, and he has a bunch of old footage that I guess he's been sitting on it, or maybe he came out with it a long time ago, and he's re-releasing it. But it's a lot. This isn't that old, but he has some really old footage that's pretty damn cool. I've been watching his channel. Anyways,
full of Vietnam. I have
just to give y'all a feeling of Vietnam.
When I got to Vietnam,
it's important.
I literally expected to be welcomed with open arms by the people of Vietnam. I had in my head the black and white newsreels I had seen on the Walter Cronkite 20th Century show of the American troops rolling through villages in France and being showered with wine and flowers and kisses. And as we were driving down, a guy from the battalion I was assigned to picked me up in a Jeep at Da Nang, and we had to drive the 20 miles to where my battalion was located. And I really was disappointed that there weren't people standing along the road waving to me and offering me flowers and things. I really expected to be greeted with open arms as a liberator, and it was as though I was invisible, as though I didn't exist. And that was a little perplexing. Moreover, they looked funny and they acted funny. I mean, just riding along in this Jeep the first day I got there. They lived in little straw huts, and they had animals in their backyards, and they weren't like us. They smelled bad. The whole country smelled bad. You could smell it. It hurt the nose.
You heard that?
And that was disturbing. And then I was there on the third day I was there, this guy who had picked me up in the Jeep, a corporal who I was ultimately going to replace, he and I were in the battalion intelligence section. We were sent down to the tractor park, the amphibious tractor park, to meet a bunch of detainees. It was our responsibility to take care of prisoners, and detainees were a classification of civilians. They were not combatants. They could be detained for questioning. That's why they were called detainees.
That sounds familiar.
Jimmy and I went down there to the track park, and 2 tractors came in. They had a whole bunch of Vietnamese up on top. 5 flat-topped vehicles, about 8 or 9 feet tall. And as the tractor wheeled into the park, the Marines up on top immediately began hurling these people off. They were bound hand and foot so that they had no way of breaking their fall. And they were old men, women, children, no young men. And I couldn't believe these guys were treating these people this way. And I turned to Jimmy and said, I grabbed him by the arm and said, what are those guys doing? We're supposed to be helping these people. And Jimmy turned to me and he looked at my hands on his arm. I sort of took them off and he said, Earhart, you better keep your mouth shut until you know what's going on around here.
That sounds familiar too.
And I think it was at that point that I realized things were not quite what I was expecting. It went downhill from there. And again, I can't even begin to explain in the space of time that you have all of the things that went into it. But I began to understand, it became obvious that the enemy was the very people in these villages around us. And we were in a very heavily populated area at that time. They were the enemy, or at least the enemy was out there somewhere and we couldn't tell one from another. And day after day, our patrols went out and we ran into snipers and mines, and snipers and mines, and snipers and mines. I saw 4 armed enemy soldiers the first 8 months I was in Vietnam. And yet our battalion during that same period of time sustained 75 mining and sniping incidents per month, over half of them resulting in casualties. This is for a unit of about 1,000 men. But there was no one to fight back in. And you begin to think, people are the enemy. They're all the enemy.
You heard that?
And then you go through villages and, you get sniped at, and so you call an airstrike in on the village, and the whole village goes up. Or you go through a place and you search it, and you burn houses and blow them up. The common perception, the notion I had when I was in high school was that the Viet Cong terrorized the Vietnamese population, forced them to fight against the Americans on the pain of death. What I began to understand in Vietnam was that they didn't need to do things like that. All they had to do was let a Marine patrol go through a village, and whatever was left of that village, they had all the recruits that they needed. I began to understand why the Vietnamese didn't greet me with open arms, why they in fact hated me. But of course that didn't change the fact that my friends were getting killed and injured every day, and the only place that you could focus your own anger and fear was on those civilians who were there. So it was this
horrible
self-perpetuating
situation
mechanism. The longer that we stayed in Vietnam,
and it's unnatural. Like it was created
because we created them, we produced them.
Oh.
None of that distilled itself into the clear kind of expression that I'm presenting now. What I began to understand within days, and which became patently clear within months, was that what was going on here was not what I'd been told. What was going on here was nuts, and I wanted to get out. I knew if I were still alive on March the 5th, 1968, they'd stick me on an airplane in Da Nang. We used to call it the Freedom Bird. And I could fly away and forget the whole thing. Turned out not to be quite so easy to forget it, but that was the notion. And certainly for my last 8-9 months in Vietnam, I ceased to think. I quite literally ceased to think about why I was there or what I was doing.
Does that sound
The
familiar?
sole purpose for my being in Vietnam at that point was to stay
Ceasing
alive
to think
until I could get out.
as a defense.
And the reason for that is that, the kinds of questions that began to present themselves were just, the questions themselves were ugly. And I didn't want to know the answers. It's like
Don't want to know
it's
the
like
answers.
banging on a door. You knock on a door, and the door opens slightly, and behind that door it's dark, and there's loud noises coming, like there's wild animals in there or something.
Monsters.
And you peer into the darkness, and you can't see what's there, but you can hear all this ugly stuff. You want to step into that room? No way. You just sort of back out quietly, pull the door shut behind you.
Cognitive dissonance.
And that's what was going on. The questions themselves were too ugly to even ask, let alone try to deal with the answers.
That's the state of America right now.
Part of what was going on is that I could not have made sense of what I was seeing and doing in Vietnam because I did not have a full deck of cards. I needed
Because
to
you decided
have
to not think.
an understanding of the political and historical realities that brought us to Vietnam before I could make sense of what I was seeing.
What I say? History.
I began to acquire the other cards in the deck during the 3 years or so after I got back from Vietnam. But while I was there, nothing made sense because I kept trying to, play this game with 27 cards instead of 52 cards, and it kept not coming out right.
It ain't gonna never come out right. You're missing half the deck.
All I knew was that it was nuts. I mean, it became clear within 3 or 4 months that my reasons for being in Vietnam were not clear. I mean, this notion of defending the people against these invaders from North Vietnam, the people hated me. The Vietnamese people hated me. And it was perfectly
Wonder why.
Perfectly clear. I mean, people didn't say good morning to you. People hated me.
Yeah.
Maybe
it was the mustache.
Other people's experience, some other people's experience was different.
Oh, he probably didn't have that mustache.
In my own experience, the
They make you
Vietnamese
cut
people hated me, and
out.
I gave them every reason to hate me. I beat them. I sometimes killed them.
Yeah.
I destroyed their houses. I destroyed their crops.
That'd be a reason to hate you.
I destroyed their culture.
If you did that to me, I'd hate you.
Why in the hell should those people like me? And I could see that I was doing that. And I could see that nothing we were doing was having any impact on the war itself. Now, the funny thing about Vietnam is that I was getting Time magazine every week. It came in the mail. I could read about my war even as I sat in the middle of it. And I would read about what Lyndon Johnson would say and what McNamara would say and what Rusk would say. And I could look around and see that, I don't know what war they're talking about, but that's not what's going on here. We actually had an incident happen where one of our line companies stumbled upon a fairly large cache of Viet Cong weapons and ammunition. And I read in the Stars and Stripes, the daily newspaper that we received, this little action actually made it into the papers, and we read that we had set the Viet Cong effort back by at least 4 months in our area. Within a week of that article appearing in the paper, within 10 days of the incident itself, the bridge 150 meters in front of our battalion compound was dropped by Viet Cong sappers. An Amtrak coming in from
bad for
Horseshoe
everyone.
area from one of the line companies hit a 50-pound box mine. Several men were killed. A bunch more were wounded. A patrol out at Phuoc Troc Bridge was ambushed. Several people were killed. Several people were wounded. I mean, nobody told the Viet Cong that they'd been set back for 4 months. And yet this is what you're reading in the newspapers. This is what you're being told back in the United States. I could see that the war went on day.
I'm gonna let him finish, but I'm gonna put a pin right there because the reason why I'm playing this video is because this type of stuff they're not gonna let out for recent. This is old, so that's the reason why I can pull this up and when we can watch this. But there is stuff going on right now that's very, 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 very similar to this right now, and you wouldn't be able to hear the candid voices of the people, the boots on the ground, and because they're gonna keep that censored. But you can watch this video and listen to this guy and imagine what the people today are thinking. And the newspaper, what the newspaper is saying, and all of that. So I'm gonna let him talk some more.
After day, interminably, at the same pace, no matter what we did. I'm wasting your film.
You're not.
When I left Vietnam, I was at the time I was in the midst of the battle for Hue City during Tet, 1968, February '68, and I'd been up in the city for 2.5, 3 weeks. And I knew that my day was coming, but I wasn't sure when. And at that point, we weren't thinking about things like that. And we were in the middle of a low-key firefight. We were exchanging fire with some guys across the street from us out along the eastern, the northeast section of Hue City. What was left of my unit, the scouts, about 6 of us. And a Jeep comes hauling up the street along the river and whips into this little compound where we were and says, "Earhart, your orders are in. Let's go." Lieutenant, my boss. And I stood, well, I didn't exactly stand up, but I immediately began to strip off my gear and distribute it to the other guys who were there and said, "So long, see you back in the world." Got on the Jeep. Last thing I saw of those guys, they were laying down covering fire for us. We burned our way back down the street. There was a chopper sitting on the LZ. I got on the bird. Was up 3,000 feet above Hue City 10 minutes after I knew I was on the way out.
That's how he's able to be here to say this video.
Processing.
May not have made it.
They yanked me out early because one of my older brothers by this time had arrived in Vietnam, and they arranged for me to spend a couple of days with him. And I got back. In early March. Came in at night. Went through more processing. A place called Treasure Island in San Francisco Bay. And then I was free to go, and I was still had time in the Marines. I had a month's leave, basically, before I had to report to another duty station in North Carolina. And I got a taxi, and there I was, my first view of the United States, and I was really, could hardly wait. And it was absolute impenetrable fog. We came across the Oakland Bay Bridge, couldn't see 10 feet, couldn't see anything. Got to the airport. There was part of what affected my coming back. I was happy to be alive. I was excited, but at the same time, I was very ambivalent. I was afraid, partly because I had a girlfriend when I went over there, and in September, 8 months after I was there, I got a Dear John letter from her, and I kept hoping that I'd be able to fix this up once I got back. And I did not know what kind. And that woman, that girl, had become the focus of my life while I was in Vietnam. She had ceased to be a real person. She'd become this icon.
We kept him alive.
And then, of course, she had sort of, said, "Take a hike," but you can't just let go of a vision like that, of the thing that has kept you going. So I was scared about all that. I didn't know what I was going to find when I finally got back to the East Coast.
That was random as fuck. But, I'm going to keep on making these videos, and I'm going to be random as fuck. And that's just what it's going to be. So that you guys don't know what the hell's coming, and also you're gonna learn, bro. You're gonna surprisingly learn. I know these videos are boring as hell, bro. I know it is. Just like going to class. I'm sorry. Maybe we can talk about the Aborigines in Australia dying in jail. I don't know how y'all feel about that. Gunman in deadly Fort Worth shooting stoned to death. This is recent. I don't know if I want to cover that. Desperate locals try to put out wildfire in Turkey. I was going to cover some of that shit because Like I say, everything is connected. Death toll in China floods surge past 300. Damn it! Give me a second, y'all. Pakistan occupied Kashmir election rigged. Cuba blames U.S. and the country's biggest protests in years. Did I cover that part? I might go back to Cuba a little bit. I don't remember covering this. It's only a 4-minute.
Took to the streets of Havana and elsewhere to protest food and medicine shortages. Cuba's President Miguel Diaz.
The United States has denied Cuba's accusation that it is to blame for a wave of protest on the Caribbean island. People across Cuba took to the streets on Sunday, venting their frustration over food and medicine shortages and record COVID-19 infections. President Miguel Diaz-Canel said that U.S. actions were stoking the unrest.
These are the images Cuba's state TV broadcast of Sunday's mass protest. The country is going through its worst economic crisis in decades. Thousands took to the streets of Havana and elsewhere to protest food and medicine shortages. Cuba's President Miguel Diaz-Canel said it was the work of troublemakers. Yesterday, they threw stones at police forces, turned over cars, a totally vulgar, indecent and delinquent behavior. They've gotten the response they deserved.
Y'all heard that?
The protests and their scope are almost unprecedented in the history of the communist country. President Diaz-Canel blamed U.S. sanctions for the unrest. You have been carrying out policies that violate the human rights of an entire people for more than 60 years, and you intensify them in the midst of a pandemic. And now you want to present yourself as the big savior? Lift the blockade, lift the 243 measures, and we will see how we get along. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken says the Cuban regime has no one to blame but itself.
It would show that they simply are not hearing the voices and will of the Cuban people. People deeply, deeply, deeply tired of the repression that has gone on for far too long.
And President Joe Biden expressed solidarity with the protesters.
The United States stands firmly with the people of Cuba as they assert their universal rights, and we call on the government of Cuba to refrain from violence or attempts to silence the voice of the people of Cuba.
Quiet returned to the streets of Havana on Monday, but the calm was forced, not free. Security forces patrolled the capital in large numbers. Mobile internet outages were frequent throughout the day.
Y'all heard that?
Access to many social media sites was blocked.
Y'all heard that?
Well, does Cuba's president have any ground for accusing the U.S. of a hand in these protests? We asked William Leobrand, professor of government and expert in Latin American politics at American University in Washington, D.C.
So we asked some guy in Washington, D.C.
Sure, he points to the fact that the United States has been spending about $20 million a year.
I'm not gonna listen to this guy. They go and ask some guy in Washington, D.C. about what's happening in Cuba. What's wrong with that picture? This is an example of the whole mainstream media. They never have boots on the ground. They're always pulling videos from somewhere else. They don't really fucking know shit. So there's no point listening to this guy in Washington, D.C. trying to tell us what the fuck is going on in Cuba. Fuck out of here, bro. You could tell us some historical shit. You cannot tell us what's happening on the ground because you ain't on the ground. Only somebody on the ground can tell you what the hell is happening on the ground. Super simple. Like I said in my other video, I'm out of breath, bro. And a lot of these videos, I'm planning for y'all to make connections because there is a connection between all of this stuff. Let's do a little bit of this.
After serving nearly 8 years.
not gonna play a lot of this.
This is his Bible when he passed away. I just set that up. And
what's up?
Like if anyone wanted to know about his childhood or now he was a happy person.
Latona Dungay's son was just weeks away from being considered for parole after serving nearly 8 years in prison for assault, attempted sexual assault, and being party to a robbery.
He got killed over a biscuit in the jail. Why is he not here with me today? Is because you could see on the film of six monsters killing one man.
What I want you to do is come to the door, put your hands through the hole.
Hold on, you guys. Let me put in this. I'm not gonna watch much of this, but I'm gonna let y'all see a little bit more of this story. The video is only 11 minutes, anyways. But listen. So the thing is this, right? The thing is about Aborigines in Australia. They don't treat them like they're human. It's kind of like black people in the United States, and they're second, third, fourth, fifth class. They're not even citizens, not really. And they can kill them like with nothing. In the law, the court is going to be on their side. It's totally racist. Like Australia is like the racist. Australia is a baby United States is what it is. And anyway, so the thing about people going to prison, right? If you committed a crime, you did something wrong, that's fine. You go to jail and you're getting punished. Going to jail is your punishment. All the rest of that shit is not part of it, bro. Like getting killed in jail is not what should happen, right? Right? Come on, you guys. You can't be okay with that, regardless of what crime they committed. So that's my pin in that. And I'm gonna go back to the video. Hold on, I fucked up. Here we go.
And your cell moved and you get handcuffs on a move. Do that now or force may be used.
This video from inside a prison in New South Wales shows Dungay's last moments alive.
1, 2, 3, go.
The guards say they went in because he was diabetic and had elevated blood sugar levels but refused to stop eating a packet of crackers.
So they
dragged
go
him
in
to another cell and injected him with a sedative. He can be heard trying to tell the officers 12 times that he can't breathe.
He wouldn't eat the crackers because he was gonna die. So they go in and kill him.
He pulled the shirt up over his head because he knew what was going to happen. You can see him in the film, pulling it up, ready for them to do what they're going to do to him. So, no weapon, no nothing. What are you going to do with it? They killed him.
What is it like as a mother to watch that footage?
It's cruel, but in the end, it's fine to you because you know what they've done. Truthfully, you know what they've done to your son.
What does justice look like for you?
That's when they admit the accountability is what they've done. That's the way it is. Why don't they tell the truth?
The state coroner's office investigated and recommended changes, but didn't recommend criminal charges, despite finding that officers' use of force and restraints did contribute to Dungay's death. Indigenous Australians make up a disproportionate share of the nation's prison population, and while they're not more likely to die once in custody, families of the deceased are asking why more wasn't done to protect them. 30 years ago, an investigation at the highest level was formed to try and figure out why so many Indigenous people were dying in custody or while interacting with police. The Royal Commission even looked into the possibility of foul play, and the final report made more than 300 recommendations. But not all of them have been put in place, and 9 Indigenous Australians died in custody already this year.
Stay for justice. Hopefully.
That 9 number may not seem that big, but they've already killed most of the Aborigines. There's not that many of them. A bunch of damn British people over there now.
I hope this opens the door for all the First Nation people and death in custody of all families, because the pain is so great and we're going to resolve that pain.
There is public support for this too. So the fact that the Australian government is still not doing anything about it is, to me, just unacceptable. But that's why we're doing this.
Yeah.
Lieutenant Dungay and her team have seen enough investigations, inquiries, and inquests. They want justice and action on a national level.
How can you have over 440 victims and nobody gets arrested or charged? I'll tell you why, because all the victims were Aboriginal.
Does that sound
I want the
familiar?
United Nations to say loud and clear to our racist government that Black Lives Matter. My son said 12 times, I can't breathe. I'm happy for George Floyd's family getting justice. It gives me hope to get justice for my family and for David. Stop slaughtering our people. No more Aboriginal deaths in custody. Black Lives Matter. David's life mattered.
Has the Premier agreed to meet you or the Attorney General? Has anyone, from the government spoken to you at all?
We've put submissions in to meet with the actual Mr. Headman, Scott Morrison. You listening to me right now out there, Scotty? Why won't you meet with my auntie? Is she a threat? Are we a threat? The only threat we see here is you won't meet with us, you won't listen. Follow your friend Biden and get to the table and do something that's right for the people.
George Newhouse has spent much of his career fighting for the rights of Indigenous Australians.
Why has no prison guard ever been charged for an Indigenous death in custody?
I believe it's because we have a colonial legal system protecting a colonial incarceration system. And the system's doing exactly what it's supposed to do, which is to incarcerate Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people at rates far beyond those of non-Indigenous people.
And when you say colonial system, you mean a racist system?
I do mean that.
Is part of the problem here the fact that you've got police investigating police, essentially, or authorities investigating themselves?
That's one of the major criticisms. The Royal Commission hoped that coroners
We investigated
or other
ourselves and
independent
found no
investigators
wrongdoing.
would look at deaths in custody, look at the systemic problems that lay behind them, and make profound recommendations that would ensure that they don't happen again. The coroner found that there was no reason for the guards to enter the cells that day.
Yeah.
No health reason, no security
What
reason.
the fuck? They went there to kill
He
him?
didn't refer anyone for prosecution, and that's what's upset the family.
Following large Black Lives Matter protests in Australia, the New South Wales government held its own inquiry, which recommended that an independent police watchdog investigate deaths in custody rather than police.
Have you seen the
Why is it? Why doesn't that already?
No, but I've seen some of the evidence before the inquest.
It should be a given.
You say that it's important for justice to be done and for justice to be seen to be done.
Yeah.
Many would say. Justice certainly hasn't been seen to be done. What needs to happen in order to address those failings?
Well, we'll look at the recommendations of the parliamentary inquiry and consider what our response is to those. But I can't stress enough that the tragic death of David Dungay has been the subject of independent inquiry by a coroner who is an independent judicial officer who takes submissions from families, from the custodial officers concerned, and has made findings and recommendations. So that is very detailed, very comprehensive, very transparent, fair in that everyone has their day in court and can put submissions and lead evidence. Can we do better? I don't know, but that's something we'll look at when we examine the responses
Oh my
the government
God.
will make to the parliamentary inquiry.
Well, clearly something is still going dramatically wrong. This year, in March and April alone, we had 6 Indigenous deaths in custody, 4 of which were in New South Wales. How are we seeing statistics like that 30 years after the Royal Commission into Aboriginal?
Well, most deaths in custody are because of natural causes.
Oh,
The cases like
that's
David
not what we're
Dungay
talking about.
are exceptional. The biggest solution to Indigenous deaths in custody is reducing the rate of Aboriginal overrepresentation in our prisons.
That's true.
And the best way to do that is to address the socioeconomic causes for that overrepresentation.
But you dodging the whole thing, bro. We talking about people dying in prison. You talking about some more other shit, bro.
Are you hoping that this starts
Natural causes my ass.
Still stuck on that. It's just someone's had a big break.
He didn't die from natural causes.
Oh, what is it?
Fuck out of here with that.
Like everyone else.
That's the shit that make me so fucking angry.
Everything. There's no equal rights. Because of my color.
Yeah, man. Like I say, bro, that shit don't make you upset. I don't know. I don't know what will make you mad if that don't make you mad, bro. That don't make you mad. What's gonna make you mad, bro? Oh, it's because it's in Australia. Oh, it's because it's Aborigines. It's the same, bro. It's the same over here, bro. It's the same. It's the same. It's the same. Stop fucking looking at others. That's what they do to y'all. They make you look at, separate everybody. So like, oh, that's not me. No, it's a world community. Ugh. Let's get a little light because I always talk about the lottery.
6'9".
So, and Crack got a new video about the lottery.
36.
36.
18. And finally, 22.
Look at this man. He looks happier than you've been in weeks. All of his dreams are about to come true because he was brave and took a fair shot at the American dream by playing the lottery. Makes you think, huh? This could be you. Though statistically speaking, it won't be. I'm Roger, and I'm here to tell you about my Power Sphere Lottery, an exciting way to potentially win lots of money by spending what seems like a small amount that will in fact grow quite dramatically over time. But you're not thinking about what playing the lottery for 20 years costs, right? You're thinking about how spending 5 today could make you 10 million tomorrow. Yes! Please keep thinking that. It seems simple. All you have to do is pick a couple of random numbers, the birthdays of your loved ones perhaps, or maybe just your favorites, and tell them to a sad convenience store employee. 696969. That's it. That's the game. You just played a game. But if it seems too hard, just take your paycheck and plot it into a nearby shredder. It has about the same effect. Well, we'd like you to believe that the only thing preventing you from becoming a billionaire and following your dreams is owning this scrap of paper. In reality, you're 5,000 times more likely to be hit by lightning and 8,000 times more likely to be murdered. Neat, huh?
I don't know. Is it neat to find out I'm more likely to be murdered than win lots of money?
Fun question. Anyway, we like to say that we're selling you the American dream because that tested better in focus groups than calling it a tax war, which essentially it is. We actively target lower income households who have no other way to climb out of poverty. We carefully choose what types of programming we advertise on and place higher concentrations of ticket vendors in lower economics neighborhoods. That's why the average low-income household spends almost 9% of their savings on these beautiful slips of paper.
No, I'm not poor. This is just, I only play sometimes. You know, it's a fun distraction. And 2 weeks ago, I was only one number off, so I got pretty close. That's how probability works, right?
Hey, for the purposes of my industry, probability works however you think it does.
Yeah.
Attaboy. Let's say you win. I mean, you won't if you play our popular Power Sphere lottery game. The odds are 185 million to 1 that you'll win. So we might as well just call it impossible. But let's not, for argument's sake. Because even if you are that lucky person, you can look forward to a life of regret and isolation. 33% of lottery winners eventually file for bankruptcy, and 50% feel absolutely no change in their overall happiness. The very thing the lottery promises to give you.
Wait,
no. In case we haven't already mentioned it multiple times during the commercial, will tell you that the current jackpot is over $140 million. That's a nice number you'll never see, because when you win, you have the option of either taking the lump sum payment, which is actually worth about half of that $140 million, minus whatever the government wants, or the long-term payment option, which we pay out over 20 or 30 years, minus again, whatever the government wants out of it. I don't think I remember how we came up with those options. I just know they keep most of the money in our pockets.
That sounds a lot like gambling.
Bingo Bango! Which is a scratchy lottery game I think you just love. He's right, though. It's like gambling, but worse. We take away all of the skill of blackjack or poker just to make sure we have the best chance at getting your Benjamins. And not only is it just as addictive, but literally the only reason it stays legal is because the government is the profiteer of your hopeless dreams. So, if you don't have enough money to rich gamble or play the stock market, we're here for you. Go ahead. Make all your dreams come true by buying into our legal scam. Because with institutionalized poverty, it's the only option we give you. I've been Roger.
Woo! You guys, heavy, right? Damn, and that was all just jokes. Man, the freaking lottery, everything having to do with a lottery, period. It seems like the black community, the poor community, that it's like the only way you can survive is to win some kind of a lottery. Now, I don't just mean that lottery, but there's others. Like, let's say, making it to the NBA, nigga, making it to the NFL, nigga, that's a lottery, bro. You know, it being the token Negro that makes it on MSNBC or something, you know, becoming the black president. All these are lotteries, bro. 1 out of a billion chance of you doing it, but it pushes you. I don't know, bro. My brain is all over the place right now. The video explained it a lot. I don't even know what to say. I've been smoking. I'm all crazy. Yeah, man. The lottery is just a way to keep y'all down and spend your money, bro. Just like you have a better chance of making a business that can make you $1 million than you are of winning the lottery. You're not gonna win the lottery most likely. So it's better that you go at your life at stuff that can happen. You know, it's an illusion. They're selling you a dream. They're fucking you. It's actually another tax, is the way I look at it. Let me stop before I get myself in trouble.
We're here. You're all my friends.
This is random.
With the Salvation Army and other churches, it was a need to do something to get on a level to communicate with the kids, not necessarily compromising with them or not necessarily bending toward the beliefs of the kids, but having a place where they could communicate. We opened up the Answer Cafe July 30th. Prior to that, we had sort of a painting. We invited all the kids who spent their time in the park and on the corner to come in and paint whatever they wished on the walls.
Well, I was one of the first people to come here. Like, I was here when they were first putting it up and building it inside here. And like, a friend of mine, and a couple of people, in fact, all my friends that I knew at the time that were here, they were all my friends. And, you know, we did a little bit here and there, and I just stood around and did nothing. And I watched them put the place up, and ever since then, I've been hanging here. It's a nice place. I mean, I learned how to play chess here.
This is a picture of General Booth. He started in a storefront. This is where the Salvation Army in London first started off. It was a storefront, and the people at that time with their problems came into the store, and it's actually more or less going back to the old methods of getting among the people and getting more or less with it.
What do you like most about New York and down here?
New York, the people. People I meet. It's different. They're more friendly around here because on the blocks are all old hypocrites and everything, you know. They can't stand the younger generation. Around here, you know, everyone likes it. It's friendly, you know.
I came with him, but not for the reason of
well, what he came here for. Mine was a separate reason. I'm searching for myself. And I'm not really hippie. I'm straight, I'm a straight thinker. But I always believed in individualism. So I like people that are self-expressing, and I don't believe in downgrading for people that believe in their own separate ideas. I mean, if a person really, wants something, they'll go out and get it, right? Well, I found something too, because you have to give up a lot just to find yourself, and it's crazy. I dig New York.
I write this stuff while I'm working because I've got a typewriter there and nothing else to do but write. The first one goes, the widow who mourns but spurns a life of black crepe. The poet who colors a rose with a typewriter ribbon. The artist who defines love with sable brushstrokes. The students who ask why. The girls I love. The next one is courtesy of the new Beatles album, Magical Mystery Tour. I am he, as you are he, and you are me, and we are all together. And that sort of goes, thank you to John, Paul, George, and Ringo. That's the end. Mother rapers and father robbers and Stanley. Kill. Why am I here? Because I hitchhiked to Georgia where they busted me for vagrancy and loitering and walking on the wrong side of the street and no identification, so here I am. Clutching, grabbing New York City, pulled me right back like a spring. Right here. How come you're right here? Right here in the Answer Cafe? Yeah. I had to say hello to Kevin Bryant again. Welcome back and all that. Why again? How did you meet him before? Before? How did I meet you before? Oh, I know. It was last summer. He was walking in the park, and I found out this was the Answer Cafe, and he said, come in and, talk a while, and I'll listen to him.
Some of our leaders in New York City felt there was a definite need for the Salvation Army to invade Greenwich Village, and they were aware of the problem the young people were having with drugs, and of course the well-publicized problem of runaways. And our leaders felt that the Salvation Army had a definite program which could be operated in the village.
Well, I'm visiting, but I was a runaway. Why'd you run away? I don't know, the town was dead, and, the kids don't want to there, and it's a very small town, nothing to do. So, wanted to see some other sites. We didn't know about this place, and we didn't have any money or anything, so we just walked around. We were going down Grove Street, and we asked this kid, and he said, go to the answer, they'll take care of you. So we did, and they did.
Well, they found me over here, in very bad shape, hungry and everything. So they took me to the Salvation Army hostel, and I stayed for a few days, and then they talked to my grandmother and asked her if she wanted me back, and they fixed it all up.
A friend of mine brought me down here, and I liked it down here, so I came down here. Because things to do, you just don't stand in the corners. You go somewhere, you go sit down, talk to somebody.
It's random but relevant. Like I say, I want to create some community centers because I really think that's so important. That's why I got to get, it hurts me. But that's why I like to watch these type of videos, these candid type, because you could get so much information from when people are just talking like that. You get so much information, So, I don't know if y'all can read between the lines on all of that stuff. But, this was early 70s, I think, in New York, Salvation Army. And it was a place where the people could go if they didn't have nowhere to go, man. A lot of us, some of us have homes and we still need somewhere to go because we don't have nowhere to go, man. I'm going to talk about creativity a little bit. Probably wanted to wrap this video, but I don't care. Like I say, I'm keeping all my videos long now, as long as I can get them home, because it is what it is.
So let's start from the top and ask the most obvious question: how do psychologists define creativity?
Well, I think the most fundamental
element of creativity is it actually conceptualized as a biological trait.
This is hard. So, it's real dry, but
people have different personalities.
I don't know how much I'm gonna give
We
you.
all know that, although our terminology for describing those personalities is broad and somewhat difficult to categorize. But psychologists have
Y'all not gonna be able to get
progress
this.
particularly in the last 40 years, really from the.
I think I'm gonna wrap this video because it's gonna be hard for y'all to even hear that, and it's super like nuanced and intricate. So I'd have to like, I don't know, play that in slow motion or something just so y'all can freaking get it. But whatever. I have some new stuff on my channel if y'all want to check it out.
Teens.
Let's watch
Such
some
a
news.
bright person, and he was just taken way too young. An outpouring of grief for beloved teens Riley Goodrich and Anthony Barajas, both shot to death in a local movie theater. I'm Veronica Miracle.
And I'm Joey Rand. Tonight's candlelight memorial outside that theater was held just hours after the difficult decision to take 19-year-old Barajas off of life support. Our Leanne Suter has more from Corona.
So much emotion and grief for the dozens of people who gathered here at this growing memorial in front of the movie theater as they mourn the deaths of both of the teens. Riley Goodrich's heartbroken parents grieving the unimaginable, the murder of their 18-year-old daughter and her friend Anthony Barajas. Hundreds gathering in front of the Corona movie theater where the teens were gunned down.
I know that the biggest thing she would want is just to have everybody together. So, I think that she's looking down at us right now, and I think she's smiling.
It's pretty unbelievable, but I'm just really blessed and excited to see that this many people care, and we can come together as a community.
Most in the crowd knew Goodrich. News of Barajas' death only adding to the grief.
Hey you, I just wanted to let you know that you are beautiful.
The 19-year-old TikTok star taken off life support after donating his organs to save others. The young couple had just started dating.
Being here tonight and seeing both their faces, it just doesn't feel real, like Skylar said. She should be right here with us, and I just really wanted them to get to know each other.
Barajas was a soccer star at Mater Dei High. Goodrich was attending Grand Canyon University on scholarship. The pair shot execution style while watching a movie in what police say was an unprovoked attack. Their alleged killer, 20-year-old Joseph Jimenez, now behind bars. Police finding a gun and Goodrich's wallet in his home. Those gathering for the tearful candlelight vigil struggling to understand why.
Still doesn't seem real. I feel like I'm going to see them tomorrow, and we're just going to go on with our lives.
Goodrich's family says they won't let her death be in vain. They say they will be fighting to put metal detectors in movie theaters so that no other innocent lives are lost.
Hello, I'm Mark.
Metal detector. Too many people with guns. Y'all need to face the reality. Okay, I think there's another one I wanted to do. Hold on, y'all. Let me go back. Fucking, so many motherfuckers with guns, bro. Come on, man. Come on, man. Come on, man. The countries that don't have all these guns don't have all these shootings. It's super simple, bro. There's another one. Hold on. Where the hell is it? Fuck. Give me a second, y'all. I can't find it. I might wrap this video because I can't find what I'm looking for. I've been having trouble all day with this kind of thing. In the future, I'm gonna definitely I don't know. I need to put them all in a file somewhere so that I can easily pull them up because I'm having trouble.
New York. Tonight, an urgent search for suspects in a New York City mass shooting that authorities say was a brazen, coordinated attack. Police releasing this surveillance video from late Saturday showing two masked men drawing their weapons, allegedly firing dozens of shots into a crowd outside a laundromat in Queens, hitting 10 people. The video then showing a second pair of men arriving on mopeds, who officials say helped the gunmen flee.
We got so far 5 people shot. It looks like a moped was going eastbound.
After they fire at least 37 times that we know of, they calmly get on the back of the scooters and take off. So very brazen, to say the least.
Investigators now asking for the public's help identifying all 4 suspects. They believe the shooting is gang-related and only 3 of the victims were intended targets. The other 7 were collateral damage.
This is unacceptable in our streets of New York City, and it has to stop.
The victims in the shooting are as young as 19 and as old as 72. Thankfully, all of them are expected to survive. Lindsay?
Trevor, thanks so much.
Hi, everyone. George.
Across the street from Lollapalooza, a fight outside of a hotel ends with someone going through a window.
Yeah, craziness. Let's watch a little bit of Really Graceful. Just to fucking introduce y'all to this channel.
Words printed on paper. Archaeological and geological evidence suggests the total destruction of these cities actually occurred. So let's discuss a whole new set of losers, a rather degenerate variety who signed, sealed, and were delivered straight to their destiny. The losers' history of Sodom and Gomorrah. When I was a child, I loved nothing more than a good story, one in which I could be immersed, imagining myself as one of the characters, watching the scenes play out across my mind long after the last words are spoken. But somehow that sense of wonder and curiosity never translated to Sunday school or Bible study. The imagination was replaced by dread because those meant to teach the lessons from the good book managed to relay the most boring, stuffy, and difficult to understand version possible. The opposite is true, of course. The Bible is full of scandals, graphic depictions, and life lessons, and for the most part is pretty straightforward. So let me set the scene in the style of Charles Dickens by telling you a tale of 2 cities, Sodom and Gomorrah. We're starting with the book of Genesis, the first book of the Bible, but we've got to fast forward through the creation of the heavens and the earth, and all the apple and garden business, and slightly past the Great Flood. And here we arrive at Abraham, a man who was called by God to pack up and leave his home to claim a new nation. Abraham was told one day by God that the towns of Sodom and Gomorrah, as well as a few of their neighboring towns, were going to be destroyed for their wickedness. Abraham asked God to hit pause on that thought, saying that there's surely some righteous, good-hearted folks to be found there. After all, Abraham's nephew, a guy named Lot, and his family lived there. So God strikes a deal with Abraham that if he can find a certain number of folks of the non-wicked variety, then the cities will be spared. To fulfill his end of the bargain, God sends 2 of his angels to go find Abraham's nephew. But to the angel's surprise, it's not Lot and his family who initially greet them, but rather a mob of obnoxiously vulgar and threateningly forward individuals. While it seems like a rather extreme reaction from the mob to immediately swarm the angels and demand to copulate with some strange flesh, it's mentioned earlier in the book of Genesis that the sons of God walked the earth and had sex with regular old women, and these women bore children. The Bible establishes that Sodom was a well-known place where the fallen angels would go and have sex with humans, leading to genetic impurity amongst the population. The fallen angels did this because it delighted them, knowing it would infuriate God and lead to the damnation of his creation. However, the angels who came to visit Lot weren't there for any funny business. They were heavenly messengers there to deliver God's message. The angels had initially planned to spend the night in the town square, but after their welcome from the townspeople, Lot was able to convince them to spend the night inside his house, which didn't make the mob too happy. Not at all. Gathering around Lot's home, they demanded to know about the angels who visited Lot and ordered him to bring the angels outside so that the mob could have sex with them. In a classic Old Testament twist, Lot walked outside and offered up his 2 daughters to the mob, but they were insulted by this offer and proceeded to threaten Lot. They wanted to ravish his guests, regardless of if his guests were willing or not. The angels weren't all about that. In fact, they teleported Lot back inside his home and struck the mob outside with blindness so they couldn't locate the door. The angels asked Lot if he had any other family living in town and advised, if he did, to round them up and hightail it out of there because things were about to pop up, which is to imply that no more decent people within the city could be located. The area was consumed by sexual depravity and moral repugnance. As a result, God intended to destroy such an abomination. Lot warned his extended family, but they thought he was playing a prank or something, because they didn't leave the city with Lot, his wife, and his 2 daughters. Lot and his family were lollygagging, so the angels had to transport them out of the city and set them down, in what very much sounds like another instance of teleportation. The angels warned the family to hide in the mountains and not look back, otherwise they would be consumed. Lot didn't want to go to the mountains, though. He wanted to go to a nearby town to wait out the apocalypse. So the angels basically said, okay, whatever. The angels were growing impatient. They were on the clock. God rained down fire and brimstone, otherwise known as burning sulfur, over Sodom and Gomorrah and other towns found within the plain, destroying all life there, the people living in the cities as well as any vegetation and abundance in the land. Even though she was warned not to, Lot's wife looked back at all the destruction as they fled, and she turned into a pillar of salt. Abraham witnessed Sodom and Gomorrah engulfed by fire, and said the scene was like smoke rising up from a furnace. So to summarize, these cities were chock full of such twisted and immoral people that God decided they had to be destroyed. But there was a redemption clause that was fully pursued but to no avail. The mob of Sodom and Gomorrah treated their guests like new warm bodies in the prison shower, waiting for the angels to drop their bar of soap. And when rejected, the townspeople intended to violently assault Lot and rape his guests. Later in the Bible, the sins of Sodom and Gomorrah are expanded upon, explaining that the people were prideful, self-absorbed, and delighted in cruelty. The story of Sodom was never just about normal vanilla intercourse between men and women. Basically, these cities were comprised of a hedonistic group who cared little about consent and even less about the well-being of others. Their sense of entitlement, lack of self-control, and unbridled lust reduced the population to nothing more than ash and sulfur. The me generation was no more. A tactical nuke of sorts took them out. Lot's story ends rather uncomfortably. His wife died, and he and his daughters hid out in a smaller nearby town, only to escape to the mountains and live in a cave. It seemed like everyone else in the world was dead, since they just witnessed their home and everyone in their town incinerated. And with no other viable males around, and in an attempt to preserve humanity, Lot's daughters devised an incestuous plot to get Lot drunk and have sex with him. And so both of Lot's daughters became pregnant with their father's child.
I need to sell her some of my stuff. I wonder where she's getting these beats from.
With the concept of losers' history revolving around the idea that history is written by the victors, therefore implying that the history you're taught in school is not even close to the full story. It would be disingenuous of me to turn around and say with confidence that the Bible, the most read book in all of history, remained untouched throughout centuries of translations, especially in the clutches of the corrupt church. The church has demonstrated a pattern of weaponizing religion and using it as a form of control. A lie by omission is still a lie, and there's evidence that specific books have purposely been omitted from the biblical canon. These books contain important events and context, like the explanation of why God decided the Great Flood was morally necessary, with all the genetic impurity and consequences of hybridization, as well as the story of how the angels fell from heaven. In this example, the context for the flood can be found in the book of Enoch. Enoch being a patriarch of the Old Testament and a man who walked with God, and great-grandfather to Noah. Enoch is referenced in the New Testament as well. Jesus even quotes Enoch, yet the book is left out of the Old Testament. Why? It was reported that up until the 4th century,
I have
the
that
book of Enoch
book
was in circulation,
up in my
only to
closet.
be removed from the Christian canon, and almost lost altogether into
I might
the
pull it
7th
down.
century.
Out of
Corruption of the church should absolutely be acknowledged, especially when people pledge to navigate their lives by sermons and teachings. Sometimes those people become frustrated with the blatant hypocrisy of their teachers, and in modern times have turned their back on Christianity and looked for truth in another religion called science. So what does science have to say about the losers of Sodom and Gomorrah? Science has routinely demonstrated
I don't
that
see it right
biblical
away,
figures
so I
were
don't want to
real and the
dig.
events described really did happen.
Probably,
There is actual scientific and historical evidence
I
that
don't know
proves
where
that
it
the towns of Sodom and Gomorrah did indeed exist, as well as the smaller surrounding cities, and were absolutely destroyed almost instantly, as portrayed in the book of Genesis, within the same time frame depicted in the Bible. Scientists, historians, and biblical experts have all maintained that the actual location of Sodom and Gomorrah was in or around the area of the Dead Sea, a salt lake between Israel, Jordan, and the West Bank. The Dead Sea is the lowest point on Earth at 1,400 feet below sea level. At 33% salinity, the Dead Sea cannot support normal types of life that are usually present in large bodies of water. Archaeologists have discovered artifacts in this area that suggest a fertile plain once existed there, one which sustained a prosperous civilization, which came to a sudden and abrupt end around 3,700 years ago. Excavations in the area unearthed pottery fragments that were melted into glass, meaning that the crystals in this pottery were formed in literally less than a second as a result of temperatures that would rival the surface of the sun. Not only that, but scientists noted evidence of a tidal wave of boiling hot salt that blanketed a projected 193 square mile radius that experienced high force winds, the combination of which is said to have instantly obliterated an estimated 40 to 60,000 people before they were ever able to register what happened to them. While the Bible describes the cataclysmic event as God raining down fire and brimstone from the sky, both biblical experts as well as scientists have debated on the exact cause of total collapse. Theories include volcanic activity, earthquakes, a giant meteor, and even talk of thermonuclear explosion, which is particularly interesting within the context of the punishment of our losers, as the story and scientific evidence does support the phases of a blast, which would have been a flash of light, a pulse of thermal energy, then a pulse of nuclear radiation, followed by a fireball, an air blast, then of course, radioactive fallout. Plus, that would explain why the angels ordered Lot's family to hide behind the mountains, to shield themselves while God destroyed the cities. And when Lot's family didn't heed this order, and Lot's wife stopped to look back at the destruction, she ultimately perished. That kind of instruction and consequence from not following it doesn't seem in line with volcanic activity or earthquakes, but you could make the argument for meteor explosion or even something as wild as a thermonuclear blast. The Bible says, after God rained down fire and brimstone, brimstone meaning burning sulfur, the earth was rendered useless in the aftermath, which is reflected in the terrain bordering parts of the Dead Sea, where areas are covered in layers of ash, and sulfur balls with 96 to 98% purity are embedded in the terrain. Sulfur balls of this purity have not been discovered anywhere else in nature except for this location. In sulfur this pure burns hotter than hot. There's quite a bit of speculation as to the exact location of Sodom and Gomorrah within the Dead Sea region. To search for these cities, an English archaeologist who had been studying ancient maps and satellite images led a group of researchers equipped with diving specialists in a submarine down to the bottom of the Dead Sea, where they discovered the remains of an ancient settlement with traces of structures under all the layers of salt. However, the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah were a metropolis and a collection of cities that spanned a great region. So the scorched structures with distinct right angles found far away from the water likely belonged to these cities as well, buried under layers of ash with discernible features like windows and doors cut into the stone cliffs. There is even the ashen ruins of what appears to be a man-made sphinx, located at the foot of the ancient Masada fortress. The sphinx is a pagan idol with a woman's head and a lion's body, a lion human, otherwise known as a hybrid. So you don't need a submarine or a dive team to see that the events portrayed in the Bible actually did occur. You could literally power walk over there today and see it for yourself. The balls of pure sulfur and the remains of a civilization that ended abruptly. Regardless of how the Sodomites met their end or specifically where the towns were located, the point is that the story of Sodom and Gomorrah is not a fairy tale. It actually happened and was recorded in the most read book of all of history for a reason, as a warning.
What's our conclusion? Let's go. What's your conclusion?
The thing about the past is that it really never goes away, no matter how far down it's buried.
That's what I
It doesn't
say.
matter if the past is hidden under layers of salt or
Yep.
ash. smoldering in some kind of book burning ritual, crumpled up and tossed in a
Yep.
Vatican.
You could try to whitewash it.
Censored on YouTube.
It's gonna
During
come
World
back
War
up.
II, the Allies bombed the town of Hamburg, which history books would later refer to as the Hiroshima of Germany. Clearly inspired by the concept of biblical destruction, the Allies named this attack Operation Gomorrah. The bombing of Hamburg created a huge firestorm and a tornado of fire that reportedly killed nearly 40,000 civilians and injured over 100,000 more. From the ashes of World War II, the United States sprung forward into an era of prosperity and opportunity. The world was at peace for the most fleeting of moments, but tendrils of the past crept into the optimistic outlook of America's future. Wrapping around the New World built on top of lands as old as any. But this world was new to its inhabitants because there was hope. But unfortunately, evil still persisted, as it was not defeated in either of the world wars, or in the wars that would follow, as the United States soon found itself in a cycle of endless war. The same symptoms that plagued great empires of the past began to present as cultural decline. Ideological subversion, as well as the media's influence on society, has played a role in this. If you turn on the television and watch the news for an hour today, you'd probably see accounts of violence, terrorism, and war play out across your screen, only to be rivaled by the hypersexualization of stars and idols, and topped off with a few feel-good gender inversion stories. If you're lucky, you might catch a story on mothers empowering their children by dressing them in drag, and possibly some footage of those children dancing at bars while adults throw money at them. I mean, do you reckon they had a Yale drag queen story hour in Sodom and Gomorrah? It's said that Sodom and Gomorrah's main sin was sexual immorality.
Oh, I get her point
And
now.
books these days will make parallels to wherever they deem as a cesspool of sin and degeneracy. From Hollywood to Las Vegas to Washington, D.C. Cities where folks don't even try to hide their sins because they're simply not ashamed. History tells us that when leadership of a society is unable to set a good moral example, the subjects of that leadership will follow suit. One of the biggest stories last year was the alleged suicide of Jeffrey Epstein, owner of an Israeli-operated blackmail island known for sexual depravity, where it was revealed that global elite, including high-level government officials, figureheads, and influential celebrities, had visited. How does this around-the-clock news story reflect on society as a whole? Does it reflect strength or decay? Of course, you don't have to look to these cities to find those who are struggling with self-control and addiction, particularly of the sexual variety. The World Wide Web and mass media has normalized adult entertainment viewership, and it's so popular that in 1 year, more than 5.5 billion hours of adult entertainment was viewed on the internet's most popular adult website. To put that in perspective, that's over 600,000 years of content viewed over the span of a year. Top searches on the internet's most popular adult website include incest categories, which are always being promoted to viewers. And if they made an adult film out of the cave scene in Lot's story between his daughters, it'd probably do pretty well on there. All joking aside, a number of adult actors and actresses are in the business because of human trafficking. So the idea of finding pleasure from watching someone at what could be the lowest point in their life totally encapsulates the energy of Sodom and Gomorrah. God didn't destroy the losers of Sodom and Gomorrah. They had already destroyed themselves way before the fire and brimstone rained down. They destroyed each other by being selfish, only caring about themselves and their carnal desires. And they destroyed their souls by allowing spiritual forces of evil to enter their hearts and minds. Not only that, but the subtext of this story is that the Sodomites essentially allowed fallen angels to set up shop in their cities. And these fallen angels wanted nothing more than to subvert God's creation. They already got metaphorically spanked by God during the days of Noah, when the fallen angels were impregnating human women, resulting in genetic impurity and all these weird babies covered in red hair, or babies who were born with 2 rows of teeth who grew up to be giants. Like the Bible says, there's nothing new under the sun. And these days, genetic impurity has been taken to a whole new level with the transhumanist movement. With the promise of a stronger, healthier, and longer existence, science and technology is marketed to eager customers under the guise of a seeming. The Bible says that man was created in God's own image. But what will be left after generations of genetic manipulation? This video is not describing where the losers of Sodom and Gomorrah went wrong, so that we may turn around and judge each other, but instead judge for ourselves and our families what is righteous and what is not. After all, one loser's history is another loser's future. Unless What do you think, internet friends?
Yeah, what do y'all think? I think that video kind of sums up a lot of what I was talking about. And I don't agree with her completely. And I never really, some of the way, I don't want to say too much, but there's some stuff about her I totally vehemently disagree with. But she does great work. So the name of the channel is Really Graceful. And her voice is really calm and soothing. I've been watching her for so long time. But the reason why I watch her is because she puts together really good. She does good research and she kind of puts it together. Like, doesn't mean that you have to, agree with her point, you know. But you learned something after watching her video, and it also gonna make you think. So that's why I watch her videos. They really make you think about stuff and try to put stuff in perspective. So her stuff is really good. It's kind of conspiracy theory type stuff. I ain't gonna lie, a lot of her stuff is, but a lot of y'all like that, I'm sure. I'm probably gonna wrap this video. We're right at 2 hours. And like I was saying before, when I started this channel, I was gonna just do quick, short videos to try to make sure that I get views or whatever. But now I'm like, fuck that, because that's going with the fucking paradigm, and I'm trying to push against it. And so yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. And we're gonna make long ass videos, and you're just gonna have to watch these hoes. You can skip through them. You can skip through them. In the future, I'm gonna put the little fucking whatever you call it, the little timestamps in there, so y'all can just boop boop, and it'll have the little the segment name or whatever I went over. Because like in this video, I went over a whole bunch of stuff and jumped all over the place. So this video will be perfect for some of those, but I don't even know how to do that yet. But hey, I've been learning a lot. It's been almost a month now. I've learned a lot, and I keep learning. And like I say, the green screen is coming. All kinds of shit is coming. I got interviews coming. I'm getting better. I'm getting better. It's about education. It's about making you angry. It's about wanting you guys to be activists and go out into your community and try to make a difference. So I'm arming y'all with knowledge to be able to go out there, or at least the anger, the spirit, the energy to push you out there to go try to do something. Because I think if you think about it too much, you're gonna freaking not do it. So don't think about it too much. Just go out there and try to make a difference, with something. And then whatever happens, you make adjustments, because you're not gonna be successful. So once you go at it, then you see what was good and what worked and what didn't, and you keep making adjustments, and you keep going out there and you keep going out there and keep going out there. And you do it on your own time, whenever you're comfortable, and don't hurt your pockets with it either. So, if you want to spend money on it, that's cool, but just be comfortable. Just be comfortable and do what you feel comfortable. Do what you can is what I like to say. Go out there and do what you can. And as more and more people do that, it's going to make a difference. We're going to change the world together. I love y'all. Peace.